In a world that just feels so full of chaos and worry, trying to find a clear path forward can seem, well, impossible. But what if the answer isn't about just trying harder, but about looking in a totally different direction? In this explainer, we're going to break down a sermon that offers one single, powerful command as the solution. The entire message really just boils down to this one phrase from the source material: seek the kingdom. That's it. Two simple words. But what does that actually mean? How do you seek a kingdom in your day-to-day life? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack together. Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll get into why we need to seek in the first place. Then, we'll define what this kingdom we're seeking even is. From there, we'll get into the practical stuff, the how-to, and finally, we'll look at the promised outcome of actually taking this path. All right, let's dive into part one. We're starting with the core problem this whole message is trying to solve, that feeling of modern worry. The source argues that this call to seek isn't some abstract pie-in-the-sky idea. Nope. It's meant to be a direct antidote to the anxieties that so many of us feel every single day. So the sermon draws this really sharp contrast. On one hand, you've got us, right? Humans, stressing out over basic needs like food and clothing. But on the other hand, we're told to look at nature, the birds, the flowers. They don't worry, and yet they are completely provided for. And this all leads to a really powerful question from the source. If God takes care of them, why on earth wouldn't he take care of you? And that question, it leads us straight to the proposed solution. But to really understand it, we first have to define the central concept. What exactly is the kingdom? Well, the source offers a very specific definition. The kingdom isn't presented as a physical place, with borders on a map. It's framed as a king's authority and rule. And this distinction is so key. The idea isn't about some geographical territory, but about allowing that divine authority to have influence right inside your own heart. So, if the kingdom is all about accepting a divine authority in your heart, how do you actually do that? This next section is all about turning that idea into action. We're talking a practical guide straight from the source. And this is where the sermon gets super practical. It poses a question that's a real moment for self-reflection for anybody listening. Seriously, think about it. When you're out at crossroads and you need guidance, what's your first instinct? Where do you turn first? To really explore that question, the sermon uses this incredibly vivid analogy. It suggests that for a lot of us, God is like a spare tire. You know it's in the trunk, but you only think about it in an emergency, when something's already gone wrong. It's a last resort, not the first call. And here is the direct counterpoint to that spare tire thinking. The message presented in the source is all about constant availability. It's a massive shift in perspective, right? It's about going from seeing God as an emergency service to seeing God as this ever-present guide. So how do you make that shift from spare tire to first call? The source lays out three really concrete actions. First, pray continually. And if an answer feels delayed, the advice is to actually shift into praise. Second, trust his word. Use it as a guide. Remind God of his promises. And finally, step three, align your agenda with his. That means consciously choosing his perspective over your own personal plans. All right, so if you follow those steps, what happens next? This final section explores the outcome, the provision that the source claims is promised to those who decide to seek first. Drawing from an interpretation of Psalm 23, the sermon spells out the results of this shift. And there are four key promises. You will be fed, you will be guided, you will be shielded. And the ultimate outcome, as it's presented here, is that you will not lack for what you truly need. This quote really personalizes that promise, doesn't it? It reframes the whole relationship from something distant and formal to one that's close and familial. The core message is that by seeking first, you're placing your trust in a caring authority who will take responsibility for your needs. And we end on this final, crucial point. The act of seeking isn't about some external performance or how you appear to others. According to the source, what truly matters is the internal posture of your heart. It's not about how educated you are or what you're wearing, but simply about how willing you are to seek. And that leaves all of us with a final question to think about. Where is your heart looking?